Hello, I'm Peter. I'm so glad you could join me for tonight's journey. I know it's late where you are. I know the house is quiet. Maybe too quiet. Maybe that's why you're here, looking for a voice, a companion, someone to sit with you through these hours when sleep won't come and the silence feels too heavy. I understand. I do. And I'm grateful you're here. Tonight, I want to share something with you. Not a history lesson, not facts and dates, but a story about survival. About people who faced a winter so brutal it would break us. And about the choice they made, a choice that saved them. They went down into the earth. I know how that sounds. Strange, maybe frightening. We're taught to fear what's underground, to associate it with endings, with darkness, with loss. But what if I told you it was the opposite? What if going down was the wisest thing they could have done? Dim your lights if you'd like. Get comfortable. Let your body sink into whatever holds you. We're going somewhere quiet tonight, somewhere dark, somewhere that might feel small at first, but becomes somehow the safest place in the world. We're going back to medieval Europe, to a time when winter lasted 4 months, when the cold didn't just chill you, it hunted you, stalked you, waited for you to make one mistake, one wrong choice, and then it killed you. This winter didn't knock. It invaded through every crack, every gap, every place where warmth tried to hide. The wind was a blade. The snow was a burial. The darkness lasted 16 hours every day. You would not survive it standing tall. The castles couldn't protect you. Those stone towers, those symbols of power and wealth, they were beautiful, impressive, cold as tombs. The lords shivered in their great halls despite burning entire forests, despite all their gold, despite every advantage. Meanwhile, the peasants survived in pits, in holes dug into hillsides, in spaces so small you had to stoop to enter. They went down into the earth, and the earth held them, warmed them, protected them through the season when everything above ground was dying. This is not about poverty. This is about wisdom, about understanding something we've forgotten, that the earth remembers summer, holds it, shares it with anyone humble enough to ask. Tonight, we're going to feel what they felt, the choice they made, the warmth they found. Not comfort, never comfort, but something better, something truer. The warmth of still being alive when winter tried everything to stop that. We're going to understand why going down, lowering yourself, accepting that you're small and the earth is vast, why that was the most brilliant thing they could have done. So breathe with me now, slow and steady. Feel yourself settling, sinking, not into fear, into safety, into the story of people who survived by being smart enough to stop fighting, to stop insisting on height and pride and the illusion of control. They went down, and they lived. And centuries later, we're still here because they made that choice. Let's go find out why. You feel winter first in your extremities, in your toes, even though you're wearing the leather boots you spent all summer conditioning with tallow. in your fingertips, even though you've wrapped them in strips of wool. The cold comes for the parts of you that extend furthest from your core, and it begins its slow work of claiming territory. This is late October, maybe early November. The exact date doesn't matter, because you're not tracking time by calendars anymore. You're tracking it by signs, by the angle of the sun, which is dropping lower every day, by the behavior of birds which have already fled south in ragged formations, by the first frost that came 3 weeks ago and hasn't lifted since. The village is changing. You can see it in the way people move. There's an urgency now, a purposefulness. Every action is weighted with the knowledge that winter is not coming. Winter is here, and the season of preparation is over. Now comes the season of endurance. Your neighbors have already begun. You can see them at the southern edge of the settlement, where the land rises gently toward a hillside that will catch whatever pale sunlight manages to break through the grey skies. They're digging, not storage pits, though those have been dug too. Not graves, though. There will be need for those before spring comes. They're digging homes. This is the part that our modern minds struggle to process. We build upward, always upward. Taller buildings, higher floors, skyscrapers that seem to compete with the clouds themselves. We associate height with progress, with civilization, with advancement. The idea of deliberately going underground, of choosing to lower yourself into the earth, feels like regression, like failure, like something only the desperate would consider. But watch these people. Watch the way they work. There's no desperation in their movements, no panic. This is deliberate, methodical. This is knowledge being applied, wisdom being enacted. This is survival strategy refined over generations into something that works. The man leading the dig is older than you. His father dug a pit in this same spot 30 years ago. His grandfather before that. The hillside is marked with the subtle depressions of previous winters, previous pits that served their purpose, and then collapsed back into the earth, leaving only gentle indentations that speak of human occupation if you know how to read the landscape. He's teaching his sons now, showing them where to dig, how deep, how to recognize the difference between soil that will hold and soil that will crumble, how to orient the entrance, how to create a structure that will stand for 4 months of occupation without collapsing, without flooding, without becoming a tomb instead of a shelter. But not everyone is calm. Not everyone has this practiced knowledge. Thomas stands at the edge of his own pit, hands shaking. His wife Ilara, 7 months heavy with child, sits on a fallen log nearby. Her belly presses against her threadbare cloak. Between them, their daughter Agnes, 6 years old, watches with eyes too large for her thin face. Agnes is shivering, not from cold yet, from something else. Fear maybe, or the memory of last winter when she watched the neighbors' children stop moving in their sleep. When spring came and those small bodies were carried out wrapped in cloth, stained with blood from lungs that couldn't survive the smoke and the damp and the endless cold. Thomas digs faster. The ground resists. Every shovelful feels like breaking stone. His hands are already bleeding. The frost line is deeper this year, deeper than last year, deeper than his father remembered it ever being. How much deeper? Elara's voice is tight, controlled, but Thomas hears the edge in it. The thing she won't say in front of Agnes. We started too late. We won't finish in time. The sky is the color of old iron, heavy, pressing down. Thomas can smell the snow coming. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And when it comes, it won't stop, won't give them another chance. His neighbor, old William, finished his pit 3 weeks ago. Went down 2 weeks ago when the first serious cold came. Thomas had thought that was excessive, paranoid, wasteful to use food and fire when you could still manage above ground. But William's pit is silent now, sealed, safe, while Thomas is still here, exposed, racing against time he doesn't have. Papa. Agnes tugs at his sleeve. Her fingers are already turning white at the tips. Will we be warm tonight? Thomas doesn't answer, can't answer, because he doesn't know. The pit is barely a meter deep, needs to be twice that, needs walls shored up, needs a roof, needs so many things he hasn't done yet. Elara shifts one hand on her belly. He's kicking, she says, not to Thomas, to herself, to the unborn child who doesn't know yet what kind of world he's arriving into. He's kicking hard. Thomas digs. His shovel hits something. Not rock. Frozen earth so hard it might as well be rock. He strikes again. Again. The shovel blade bends. Doesn't break, but bends. One of the tools he needed to last the winter, damaged before winter has truly begun. Agnes starts to cry. Quiet tears that freeze on her cheeks. I'm cold, Papa. I know, little one. Thomas doesn't stop digging. Can't stop. Just a little longer. But how much longer? How much time do they have? The other families are already underground, smoke rising from hidden vents in the hillside. The village above is emptying. Soon they'll be alone, exposed, visible to the wind and the cold and the hunger that comes for families who don't prepare in time. This is engineering. Don't let the simplicity fool you. This is sophisticated understanding of materials of thermodynamics of the relationship between human comfort and planetary systems. You kneel down next to them. Press your hands against the earth. The surface is hard. Frost has penetrated maybe 20-30 centimeters down, locking the soil into something that resists the shovel. But this is expected. This is why they started a month ago when the ground was still workable. Now they're deepening what they began then, taking it down another level, creating space. The pit is rectangular, roughly 3 meters by 4, just large enough for a family of 6 and the animals that will share their winter, not larger. Every cubic meter of space requires heating, and heat is the most precious resource they have. So the space is exactly what's needed. No more, no waste, no room for the luxury of emptiness. As you dig deeper, something remarkable happens. The earth changes. The first 30 centimeters frozen solid give way to soil that's merely cold. At 60 centimeters, you can feel a subtle difference in temperature. Not warmth exactly, but a lessening of the aggressive cold that characterizes the surface. At 1 meter down, the change is unmistakable. The earth here is perhaps 5, maybe 8 degrees warmer than the air above. This is thermal mass at work. This is the earth's capacity to store energy and release it slowly. All through the summer and into autumn, the sun beat down on this hillside. That energy didn't just warm the surface, it penetrated, soaked in, spread through the soil particles like heat through water, slow but inexorable. And now, weeks after the surface has frozen, that stored warmth is still here, held in the planet's vast body, available to anyone willing to go down and claim it. The physics are elegant in their simplicity. Soil has a thermal conductivity, a measure of how quickly heat moves through it that depends on several factors. Moisture content is the biggest variable. Dry soil, the kind you want for winter shelter, has a conductivity of around 0.15 to 0.25 watts per meter. Kelvin. To put that in perspective, that's comparable to some modern insulation materials. Far, far better than stone, which conducts heat readily. Better even than solid wood in many cases. What this means in practice is that once you're surrounded by earth, once you've placed a meter or more of soil between yourself and the frozen world above, you've created a barrier, a thermal break. The cold that wants to suck the life out of you has to work through that entire mass of earth. And earth is patient. Earth is stubborn. Earth holds on to heat the way it holds onto memory. You dig wider now. The pit expands. You're not going straight down, which would create walls that might collapse. You're creating gentle slopes, angling the sides so they support themselves, using the Earth's own weight to create stability. Occasionally, you place a piece of timber, a branch thick as your arm, to shore up a section that looks questionable. But mostly, you're letting the Earth be itself, letting it hold its own shape. The dirt you're removing, you pile carefully at the surface, not too close to the edge, which would create weight that might cause collapse, but close enough that you can use it later. That earth will become part of your roof. We'll add mass and insulation to the thatch covering. We'll complete the envelope that separates your small pocket of warmth from the hostility outside. At 1.5 meters deep, you're standing in a different world. The wind that's been cutting across the village for weeks doesn't reach here. Sound is different, muffled. The constant acoustic assault of winter, the howl and moan and crack of ice and wind and suffering trees, all of that fades to a distant murmur. You can hear your own breathing, can hear the scrape of the shovel against soil, can hear the particular quiet that comes from being surrounded by mass. This quiet is not emptiness, it's presence. The earth is speaking to you in the language of physics and patience. It's saying, I am here. I am solid. I remember summer. And I'm willing to share that memory if you're willing to stay. Your neighbors are working on the roof structure now. Long poles relatively straight cut from the forest before it became too difficult to work there. These poles span the width of the pit laid across from wall to wall. They don't need to be thick. The roof isn't supporting massive weight, just enough to hold thatch and earth, just enough to create separation between inside and outside. The thatch comes next. Bundles of reeds, dried grass straw, whatever they manage to harvest and dry during the autumn. This gets woven between the poles in layers, each layer overlapping the one below, creating a mat so dense that water won't penetrate, won't even try. The technique is old, older than stone churches, older than the Roman ruins that dot this landscape. Thatching is technology from before technology had a name, and it works. A properly laid thatch roof will last years, will shed rain and snow, will compress under its own weight into something almost solid, will become effectively a living membrane between two worlds. But they're not done. On top of the thatch, they shovel earth. 30, 40, 50 centimeters of the dirt that came out of the pit. This is the final layer, the ultimate insulation. This is what turns a hole in the ground into a thermal battery. The earth on top absorbs sunlight during the day if there is any sun, holds that warmth, releases it slowly through the night, creates a buffer zone where temperature changes are gradual rather than sharp. The entrance is the last consideration. It faces south. This is not tradition. This is not superstition. This is solar gain. During winter, the sun tracks low across the southern sky. Any light, any warmth it provides will enter through that south-facing door. Not much, maybe an hour or two of weak illumination per day. But in winter, you measure wealth in minutes of sunlight. The door itself is small, deliberately small. You have to stoop to enter, have to lower yourself. This is intentional. Cold air sinks. A low entrance means that when you open the door, the precious warm air inside doesn't pour out. It stays high, stays contained. What exits is the cold air pooled at the bottom, and you replace it with your body, with your warmth, with your willingness to be part of the system. You stand at the entrance now, looking down into the space you've created. It's dark down there. Dark in a way that electric lights have made us forget darkness can be. This is not the darkness of a room at night, where you can still make out shapes. This is absolute, complete. The darkness of being inside something, inside the earth itself. And here's where the modern mind recoils, looks at that dark opening and sees a grave, sees burial, sees horror movie imagery and claustrophobia and all the cultural baggage we've loaded onto the idea of being underground. But the people who dug this pit see something else. They see shelter. They see possibility. They see a space where winter's teeth can't reach, where the cold that kills is held at bay by patient earth and careful construction, where survival becomes not just possible, but probable. You lower yourself through the entrance. Your eyes haven't adjusted yet, so you move carefully, hands reaching out, feet testing each step. The ceiling is low. You can't stand upright. The instinct to straighten to claim your full height has to be set aside. Down here, being tall is a disadvantage. Down here, you curve yourself to fit the space that fits you. And as your eyes begin to adjust, as shapes emerge from the darkness, You feel it, the difference, the change, the thing that makes this work. It's warmer, not warm. Let's be clear about that. This is not comfort by modern standards, but it's warmer than above, measurably, noticeably warmer. And more than that, it's still. The air doesn't move. There's no wind cutting through, no draft stealing heat from your skin. The air sits, waits, holds whatever warmth enters it. This stillness is salvation. Because moving air is the enemy of warmth. Moving air is how your body loses heat through convection. It's how the careful warmth you generate through metabolism gets stripped away. But still air is an insulator, a blanket made of nothing. You build a small fire in the center of the space, just kindling at first. The smoke rises, hits the low ceiling, spreads out in a layer, and begins to find its way through the thatch to the opening above. The smoke hole, the one gap in the envelope, necessary for breathing, necessary for combustion, but carefully positioned to minimize heat loss. The fire catches, grows. The light is orange and alive, and it pushes back the darkness to the edges of the space. You can see now. See the earthen walls rough and honest. See the woven thatch ceiling intricate as a basket. See the way the space curves, holds, contains, and you understand. This is not primitive. This is not the architecture of ignorance. This is brilliance. This is human adaptation at its finest. This is the choice to work with the planet instead of against it, to accept the invitation the earth offers to all its creatures. Come, be small, be humble. Let me hold you through the dark time. The great castles that dot this landscape, those monuments to human pride and power, they will be cold tonight. Their stone walls will radiate chill inward. Their high ceilings will create vast volumes of air that can never be adequately warmed. Their inhabitants will huddle close to roaring fires and still shiver. Will burn through forests worth of wood and still wake with frost on their breath. But here, in this pit, with a fire no larger than a cooking flame, the temperature is holding steady just above freezing. Uncomfortable by modern standards, yes, but survivable, sustainable. A warmth that doesn't require massive resource consumption. That doesn't demand the impossible. This is the engineering choice, not the proud choice, not the choice that looks impressive or makes statements about human dominance over nature, but the choice that works. The choice that keeps you breathing through the season when breathing itself becomes a challenge. You sit now, your back against the earthen wall. The wall is cool against your spine, but not aggressively cold. Not stealing warmth, just present, solid, reliable. You can feel, if you sit quietly enough, the faint vibration of the planet beneath you. Not dramatic, not something you could measure, but present. A reminder that you're sitting on a sphere that spins through space, that orbits a star that has its own rhythms and cycles that precede you and will continue long after you're gone. And you're inside that sphere now, not on top of it, not separated from it by layers of concrete and insulation and the hubris of separation. You're part of it, held by it, protected by its mass and its patience and its willingness to share the warmth it's been storing since summer. This is what it means to survive winter, not to conquer it, not to overcome it through force, but to understand it well enough to know where it can't follow, to humble yourself, to go down, to accept that sometimes the lowest position is the wisest position. Outside, the wind is picking up. You can hear it faintly as a distant roar, but it can't reach you, can't touch you, can't steal the precarious warmth you're building in this small space. Winter has arrived, but you're ready. Not because you're strong, but because you're smart enough to be small. Thomas is not ready. By the time darkness falls completely, he's managed to get the pit to 1.5 meters. Not deep enough, not nearly deep enough, but the snow is starting. Small flakes at first, then larger, then a curtain of white that makes it impossible to see the forest beyond the village. We have to go down. Ilara's voice cuts through the wind. Now, Thomas, we have to go down now. The roof isn't finished, just bare poles with some thatch thrown across. The walls aren't properly shored. The entrance is too wide, will let cold air pour in. Everything about this is wrong, incomplete, dangerous. But the alternative is staying above ground. And that's not survival, that's suicide. Thomas lifts Agnes. She's so light, too light. They haven't had enough food since summer. Close your eyes, little bird, he whispers. We're going into the earth, just for a little while, just until the snow stops. Agnes buries her face in his shoulder, doesn't close her eyes, stares at the dark opening in the ground like it's a mouth waiting to swallow her. Ilara goes first, lowers herself carefully, both hands on her belly. The climb down is awkward, painful. Thomas can hear her breathing hard, hear the small sounds of discomfort she's trying to hide. Then Agnes. Thomas passes her down to Ilara's waiting arms. The girl whimpers, starts to climb back up. No, Papa. No, I don't want to. It's dark. It's too dark. I know, my love. I know. Thomas's voice breaks. But the dark won't hurt you. The cold will. Please, Agnes. Please be brave. Agnes stops climbing, stands in the pit, shaking so hard her teeth chatter. Ilara wraps her in a blanket that's already damp from snow. Thomas descends last, pulls brush and snow over the entrance behind him, sealing them in. The darkness is absolute, total, the kind of darkness that makes you forget light ever existed. He lights the fire. It takes 3 tries. His hands are shaking too badly. The kindling is damp. Everything is damp. But finally, a small flame catches, grows. The light reveals their space. And Thomas's heart sinks. The pit is smaller than he thought. Barely large enough for the 3 of them, let alone the 4 they'll become spring. The walls are rough, already weeping moisture. The ceiling is too low. He can't stand upright, can barely sit without his head brushing the thatch. And the cold. Dear God, the cold. It's not warmer down here. Not yet. The earth hasn't had time to share its stored heat. Right now, they're just in a hole. A wet, dark, freezing hole that might collapse on them in the night. Is this it? Agnes looks around. Is this where we live now? Thomas pulls her close. Ilara settles beside them. The three of them, soon to be four, huddled around a fire, too small to adequately warm them, in a space too crude to adequately protect them, waiting for a winter that will test whether the mistakes Thomas made in preparation will kill them or merely make them suffer. Ilara's hand finds his in the dark, squeezes. "We made it," she says, trying to sound confident. "We're underground. We're together. That's what matters." But Thomas can feel her shaking, can hear Agnes's teeth chattering, can see in the firelight how thin they both are, how fragile. They have food for 3 months. Maybe, if they ration carefully, if they eat less than their bodies want, less than the baby growing in Ilara's belly needs, if nothing goes wrong. But winter lasts 5 months, sometimes 6. The mathematics are brutal, simple, undeniable. They might not make it. Thomas feeds another stick to the fire. The flame gutters, smokes. The ventilation is wrong. The smoke has nowhere to go. It fills the upper half of the pit thick and choking. Agnes coughs, a wet rattling cough that sounds too familiar, too much like the cough the neighbor's children had before they stopped breathing. "It's okay." Thomas lies. "It's okay. The smoke will clear. We just need to adjust the fire. I just need to..." But he doesn't know what he needs to do, doesn't know how to fix this, doesn't know if this can be fixed. Outside, the wind howls. The snow falls. Winter tightens its grip on the world above. And down here, in this hastily dug hole, this desperate gamble, this small family waits to learn if going underground was salvation or simply a different way to die. 3 weeks have passed since you descended. The days blur together down here in a way that time above ground never did. Without the sun's arc to mark the hours, without the clear differentiation between day and night time, becomes something you measure differently, by the fire's needs, by hunger, by the slow accumulation of small changes that mark progress through a season that feels endless. The pit has become a world, a small world, yes, a constrained world, but a world nonetheless with its own geography, its own climate, its own rules and rhythms, that you've learned to read as carefully as you once read the sky for signs of weather. The fire never goes out. This is the first law, the absolute commandment. Someone wakes every 3 hours through the night to add fuel. Not much. 2 small pieces of wood, maybe 3, just enough to keep the coals alive, just enough to maintain the baseline warmth that makes sleep possible. Tonight, it's your turn. You wake in the darkness, some internal clock telling you it's time. Your wife is breathing steadily next to you. Your children are piled together near the goats, a knot of bodies sharing warmth. Your mother, closest to the fire, makes that rattling sound that's become the soundtrack of these weeks. You rise carefully, slowly, moving too fast in the darkness, risks collision injury, the disturbance of others. You've learned to move like water down here, flowing around obstacles, feeling your way through the space with a knowledge that's more tactile than visual. The fire is low. Just coals now pulsing with that deep red that suggests heat without flame. You've learned to read these coals, to see in their color and their pattern how much warmth they're holding, how much life they have left. These are good coals, dense, still locked with energy. They'll accept new fuel gladly. You place 2 pieces of oak on the coals, not on top, which would smother them, but adjacent, touching just enough to begin the transfer of heat. The wood is split thin, which helps. Surface area matters. Thin pieces catch faster, burn faster, but right now you need heat more than you need longevity. The wood begins to smoke. Then, almost reluctantly, it catches. Small flames lick along the edge. The fire grows. Not dramatic, not a roar, just a gentle increase in light and warmth. Just enough. The smoke rises as it always does, fills the upper half of the space. You've grown so accustomed to it that you barely notice anymore. Your lungs have adapted. That's not the right word, but it's the closest one you have. Your body has learned to filter, to cope, to extract oxygen from air that any modern person would find unbreathable. But Agnes hasn't learned. Not yet. Her small lungs struggle with the smoke that fills their space. She coughs through the night, every night. A sound that tears at Thomas's chest more painfully than hunger ever could. Ilara holds her, rocks her, tries to position her below the smoke line where the air is clearer. But Agnes is restless, moves in her sleep, sits up, breathes in mouthfuls of smoke, and wakes coughing, gasping, her small face twisted in confusion and fear. "Hush, little bird," Ilara whispers, over and over, a prayer more than comfort. "Hush, you're safe. We're all safe." But they're not safe. Not really. Thomas knows this, can see it in the way Agnes's breathing becomes more labored each day, can see it in the dark circles under Ilara's eyes, can feel it in his own chest, the tightness that suggests his lungs are filling with something that shouldn't be there. The third night, Agnes doesn't sleep at all, just coughs, coughs, until she vomits the thin porridge they fed her for dinner, coughs, until there are spots of blood on the cloth Ilara holds to her mouth. Blood in a 6-year-old's lungs, in the third night of a winter that will last months. Thomas makes a decision. He'll adjust the smoke hole, widen it, let more smoke escape, even if it means letting more heat escape with it, even if it means burning through their limited firewood faster. Because what good is warmth if Agnes doesn't survive to feel it? He climbs up in the darkness, reaches toward where he knows the smoke hole should be. His hands find thatch, frozen thatch, covered in snow. The snow has sealed the hole, has turned their ventilation into a plug. Panic hits him, sharp and immediate. They've been breathing air that's been recycling for hours. No wonder Agnes is struggling. No wonder his own head feels thick and strange. He claws at the snow, breaks through the thatch. His hands go numb almost immediately. The cold above ground is vicious, aggressive, the kind of cold that kills in minutes if you're not careful. Fresh air pours in, along with snow, along with wind. The fire gutters, nearly dies. Thomas scrambles back down. Ilara is holding Agnes, who's gasping like a fish on land. The little girl's lips are blue. Her eyes are rolling back. "Breathe," Thomas commands. Useless words, desperate words. "Agnes, breathe. Please, little bird, please." Ilara tips Agnes forward, pounds on her back. Hard, harder than seems safe, but it works. Agnes coughs, retches, sucks in a breath that whistles and rattles, but is a breath nonetheless. She's breathing, still breathing, for now. Thomas rebuilds the fire. His hands shake so badly it takes forever. Ilara doesn't speak, just holds Agnes, just rocks and whispers, and tries to keep their daughter warm enough, alive enough, breathing enough. When the fire is finally stable again, when Agnes has finally fallen into an exhausted sleep, Ilara looks at Thomas across the flames. "We're not going to make it," she says. Not a question, a statement. "Are we?" Thomas doesn't answer, because he doesn't know. The ventilation is better now, but the fire is using more wood. And they have so little wood, so little food, so little of everything except fear and cold, and the slow creeping certainty that they gambled and might have lost. Ilara's hand goes to her belly. "He's still kicking," she says. "Still strong, still fighting." Thomas nods, can't speak past the tightness in his throat. Their unborn son, fighting to live in a body that's not getting enough food, that's breathing smoke and cold and desperation, fighting to be born into a world that might kill him before he takes his first breath above ground. Outside, the wind screams. Inside, Agnes coughs in her sleep. And Thomas tends the fire, feeds it wood they can't spare, burns away their future, one stick at a time, because the present demands it. This is survival, not noble, not brave, just desperate and uncertain, and so fragile. You sit for a moment, watching the fire establish itself. This is your time, the only time you're truly alone, truly able to think without the press of other needs, other people. In these quiet hours between sleeps, you sometimes remember what your life was like before winter. The green fields, the work that made your back ache but filled your belly. The illusion that you had control over your circumstances. Down here, you have no such illusions. You're at the mercy of forces larger than yourself. The fire, the earth, the slow, grinding passage of time. You can work with these forces, can make choices that improve your odds, but you can't control them, can't demand they bend to your will. And strange as it sounds, there's peace in that surrender. The anxiety that comes from believing you're supposed to be in control, that feeling that you're failing when things go wrong, that dissolves down here. You're doing your best, tending the fire, rationing the food, keeping your family alive. That's all you can do. That's enough. The fire's heat reaches your face, warms it. You can feel the difference between the side that faces the flames and the side that faces away. must be a difference of 10-15 degrees. Remarkable how much difference fire makes. How human civilization is really just an elaborate system for creating and maintaining combustion. The hearth itself is your greatest asset. Not just the fire, but the structure that contains it. You built it carefully days before you sealed yourself in for the winter. Stones from the creek, each one selected for size and shape. Granite mostly. Dense, heavy, the kind of stone that can take heat without cracking. These stones are doing more than you can see. During the evening, when the fire burns strongest, they're absorbing that heat, soaking it in. Their molecular structure becomes excited, agitated, full of energy. And then, through the night, they release that energy slowly. They radiate warmth for hours after the flames have died down. They're a battery, a thermal battery that you charge with fire and discharge with patience. This is technology, ancient technology. Yes, but technology nonetheless. Your ancestors figured this out thousands of years ago. Figured out that if you surround fire with mass, with material that can absorb and hold heat, you can stretch the warmth of a few pieces of wood across many hours, can create a baseline temperature that makes the difference between survival and hypothermia. The great halls in castles don't have this. They have fireplaces, massive fireplaces that consume entire trees. But those fireplaces are open. The heat they generate goes up, escapes through chimneys, warms the air, which then escapes through every crack and gap. The stone walls around those fireplaces never get warm enough to store heat. They just conduct cold inward, endlessly making the halls impossible to heat, no matter how much fuel you burn. But your pit is a closed system. The heat from your fire warms the air. The warm air warms the earthen walls. The walls hold that warmth and radiate it back. The floor, covered in layers of straw and compressed by weeks of footsteps, insulates from the frozen ground below. The ceiling, thick with thatch and earth, prevents heat from escaping upward. You're living inside a thermos. A medieval thermos made of earth and stone and thatch. But the principle is the same. You're creating a pocket of warmth and then surrounding it with materials that prevent that warmth from escaping. The efficiency is remarkable. With a single armload of wood, you can maintain livable temperatures for an entire day. Compare that to a castle where they burn cartloads of logs and still shiver, where servants work full-time just keeping fires fed, where the nobleman's first thought on winter mornings is how cold he is despite all his wealth. You, by contrast, wake uncomfortable, but not in danger, cold, but not freezing. The difference between surviving and dying, and you're achieving it with a fraction of the resources. This is what happens when you work with nature instead of against it. When you use the earth's own properties to your advantage. When you humble yourself enough to go down instead of insisting on going up. The goats shift in their corner. You can hear them chewing, that constant meditative grinding of cud. They're eating the last of the dried grass you stored. Each mouthful converts vegetation into body heat through the alchemy of digestion. And that body heat, perhaps 600 watts per goat, perhaps more, radiates into the space you share. In summer, you would never tolerate animals in your living space. The smell alone would drive you out. The mess, the noise, the sheer inappropriateness of it. But winter changes the calculation, changes what's appropriate, changes what's necessary. Those goats are heating elements. Living, breathing heaters that ask only to be fed. They raise the ambient temperature in this pit by 3, maybe 4 degrees Celsius. Doesn't sound like much. But when you're operating right at the edge of survivability, when the difference between life and death is measured in single degrees, those goats are essential. They're part of your survival technology. You've learned to manage their presence. Fresh straw every few days, which absorbs their waste and adds another layer of insulation to the floor. A low-woven barrier that defines their space keeps them mostly in their corner. Careful attention to drainage, making sure their urine doesn't create pools that would increase humidity and decrease comfort. It's not pleasant. Let's be honest about that. The smell is constant. A mixture of animal musk manure, damp wool, and the particular funk that comes from creatures living in close quarters without adequate ventilation. In your old life, the life above ground, you would have found this intolerable. But you've adapted. That's what humans do. We adapt. Your nose has grown accustomed to the smell, filtered it out as irrelevant. Your modern descendants won't believe this, but it's true. After a few weeks of constant exposure, you simply stop noticing. Your brain decides that since the smell is unchanging and not associated with immediate danger, it can be ignored. And so it is. What you do notice is the warmth. Every morning when you first wake and the fire has burned low and the air has that particular chill that suggests how cold it is outside, you notice that the space near the goats is warmer, noticeably warmer, and you're grateful. Your wife stirs now. It's nearly time for the children to wake. Nearly time for the day such as day is down here to begin. She rises, moves to the fire, adds another piece of wood. She doesn't speak, doesn't need to. You've been married long enough that silence is its own language. You know from the set of her shoulders, from the way she moves, whether she's hurting, whether she's worried, whether she needs something you can provide. This morning, she seems steady, tired because everyone is tired all the time down here, but steady. That's good. That's survivable. Despair is the real killer in winter. Not the cold, though cold is dangerous. Not hunger, though hunger weakens. But the loss of hope, the sense that this will never end, that's what breaks people. That's what makes them give up. So you guard against despair. You mark time. You note small improvements. You celebrate tiny victories. Today, we still have food. Today, the fire is strong. Today, everyone woke alive. These are victories. These matter. The children begin to stir. Your daughter first, then the boys. They're quieter than children should be. Winter has taught them stillness, has taught them that resources are limited and energy is precious, and running and shouting and all the exuberance of youth has to be set aside for the season. They'll remember this. We'll carry it with them into adulthood. will be shaped by these months in ways they won't understand until they're older. Your eldest daughter, 12, now almost a woman, rises and checks the food storage. She's taken on this responsibility without being asked, has become the household's quartermaster, tracking what you have, rationing it, carefully making sure that what needs to last until spring actually does. She's measuring out grain now for the morning meal. Not much. A handful of oats for porridge, some dried peas, a bit of the salted pork you've been hoarding. Not enough to satisfy hunger, but enough to keep functioning. Enough to keep the body's furnace burning. This is the mathematics of winter. You calculate constantly. How many days until spring? How much food remains? How much can you eat today without jeopardizing tomorrow? There's no margin for error. No grocery store to visit when supplies run low. What you have is what you have. And when it's gone, you starve. The calculation is brutally simple. Your wife begins preparing the meal. She's efficient, moves with the economy of someone who knows that every action costs energy, and energy is a limited resource. The pot goes on the fire. Water from the bucket, melted snow that you hauled in yesterday, carefully rationed. Because going outside for more means opening the door, means letting cold air rush in, means spending an hour recovering the lost heat. She adds the grain, stirs. The smell of cooking food fills the space. It's not a good smell, not by the standards of abundance. This is poverty food, survival food, but it's food nonetheless, and that makes it precious. You gather around the fire to eat. All of you, even your mother, who seems weaker every day, but still insists on sitting up, on being part of the family circle. The porridge is distributed equally. No one gets more. Not even you, though. You're the one who does the hardest physical work. Not even the children, though they're growing and need nourishment. Equality is the only fairness that works down here. You eat slowly. Make the meal last. The warmth of the food in your belly is as valuable as the nutrition it provides, maybe more valuable. For a few minutes after eating, you can feel the heat spreading through your body, can feel your fingers and toes warming as blood carries the energy of digestion to your extremities. This is one of the good moments, one of the small peaks in the daily rhythm of cold and hunger and waiting. And you savor it, fix it in memory, because the good moments are what carry you through the bad ones, are what remind you that life is worth living even when living is hard. The meal ends. Your daughter collects the bowl, wipes it clean with a bit of straw, stores it away. Resources are too precious to waste on washing. The bowl will be reused tonight and tomorrow and every day until spring. This is normal. This is how you live now. The day stretches ahead, hours to fill. There's work, always work, but it's not the demanding physical labor of summer. This is maintenance. This is survival. Checking the thatch for leaks, scraping moisture from the walls before it can promote mold, tending the goats, spinning wool, mending clothing. Small tasks that fill time and keep hands busy and prevent the mind from dwelling too much on the discomfort of the present. Your mother coughs, that deep, wet sound that's been getting worse for weeks. Your wife moves to her, helps her sit up, holds a cup of warm water to her lips. The water helps. A little loosens whatever is filling her lungs. But everyone knows, though, no one says it, that she's failing. That her body, worn by 60 winters, doesn't have the reserves to fight this illness. That spring might come too late for her. But you carry on. That's all you can do. Carry on. Tend the fire. Ration the food. Keep each other warm. Keep breathing. Keep choosing life over the easier surrender. The hours pass. Slowly. Time moves differently down here. Without sun, without the visual cues of day progressing into evening time becomes elastic. Sometimes an hour feels like 10 minutes. Sometimes 10 minutes feels like forever. You lose track. Give up trying to track. Accept that time is whatever it is, and you're just living through it. Periodically, you hear sounds from above ground. The wind, always the wind. Sometimes the distant crack of a tree branch breaking under the weight of ice. Once something that might have been a wolf howling, though it's hard to tell through the layers of earth and thatch. These sounds remind you that there's still a world up there, that this pit is not all that exists, but they're distant, muffled, not your concern. Your world is here, is small, is warm enough, and that's sufficient. As the day wears into evening, as the fire is built up for the night, as everyone prepares for sleep, you take a moment to step back, to observe this strange life you're living, this existence that would horrify your modern descendants, but that feels in its way almost peaceful. You have what you need, not what you want, not comfort, not abundance, but you have warmth, food, family, the basic requirements of continued existence. And in a season designed to strip those things away, having them is victory, is triumph, is enough. You bank the fire for the night. Cover the coals carefully with ash so they'll hold their heat through the dark hours. Arrange your sleeping space close to your wife, close to your children, close to the collective warmth that makes it through each night. And as you drift towards sleep, as consciousness fades and your body begins its nightly work of repair and consolidation, you feel something unexpected, something that doesn't make logical sense, but is true nonetheless. You feel safe, held, protected by the earth above you and the family beside you, and the knowledge that you're doing what needs to be done, that you're surviving. That winter can rage all it wants in the world above, but down here in this small warm darkness, you're beyond its reach, and that is enough for today, for tonight, for however long this season lasts. It's enough. February has arrived, though you only know this because your wife has been keeping marks on a piece of wood. 1 mark per day. 31 for January. Now she's starting a new row. Each mark is a tiny victory. A day survived. A day closer to spring. The pit has changed. Not physically. The walls are the same. The ceiling is the same. But the air feels different. Heavier. Laden with something you can't quite name. It's the weight of time. The accumulation of weeks spent in this small space, breathing the same air, seeing the same faces, waiting for a future that seems to recede as fast as you approach it. This is the dangerous time. The time when winter stops being a challenge and becomes a presence. A weight pressing down on your spirit, as surely as the earth presses down on the roof. This is when people break, when the strong become weak, when hope, that fragile thing, begins to fracture. But there's also something else, something unexpected, a quality of stillness that you've come to recognize as valuable, as rare, as something that the world above ground, the world of constant motion and noise and demand, never offered. The silence down here is not empty. That's what you've learned. It's full, textured, alive with subtle sounds that you've learned to read like a language. There's the crackle of the fire, never the same twice. Sometimes a sharp pop as moisture in the wood vaporizes. Sometimes a gentle hiss as sap bleeds from the heat. Sometimes just the soft rumble of flames consuming fuel, that sound that's older than humanity, that's programmed into your DNA as the sound of safety and survival. There's the breathing of your family, your wife's breath deep and regular, your daughter's quieter, almost musical, your sons sometimes synchronized, sometimes not, their young lungs pulling air in a rhythm that speaks of health and resilience. Your mother's breathing is different, shallower, more effortful, each breath a small labor, each exhalation carrying a rattle that shouldn't be there. There's the sound of the goats, their shifting, their occasional bleating, the grinding of their jaws as they chew. These sounds have become so familiar, they're almost comforting, almost companionable. These animals are not pets, not in any meaningful sense, but they're part of your small world, part of the crew that's weathering this together. And then there are the sounds from outside, muffled, distant, but present. The wind is the most constant. It never truly stops in winter, just varies in intensity. Sometimes it's a whisper, sometimes a roar, sometimes something that sounds almost like words like, "The winter is trying to tell you something in a language you don't quite speak." Snow falling makes a sound too, if you listen carefully enough. A soft hush, a gentle pattering when it first hits the earth above. Then silence as it accumulates, as layer builds on layer, as your pit becomes buried deeper under the white weight of winter. You've learned to read these sounds, have learned what they mean. A particular quality to the wind means the temperature is dropping. A certain pattern to the snow means it's going to last for days. You can't see the sky, can't check the horizon for storm clouds, but you can hear, and hearing it, turns out, is enough. Your children have adapted to this acoustic world even better than you have. They play games with sound now. One will make a subtle noise, a tap or a hum or a soft whistle, and the others have to identify what made it. It's not just entertainment, it's survival training. It's learning to pay attention, to notice, to understand your environment through senses that modern life has let atrophy. Your youngest son, 7 years old, has become remarkably good at this. Agnes remembers summer, sometimes, in fragments that feel like dreams now. She remembers running, really running. Not the careful shuffling steps she takes in the pit, hunched to avoid hitting her head, but running with her arms spread wide, running through grass that came up to her waist. Green grass. She remembers green, the color of it. the way it moved in wind that was warm, that didn't cut like knives. She remembers her mother laughing, not the tired, controlled sounds Ilara makes now, but real laughter, bright and careless, the kind of laughter that came when Agnes found a bird's nest, or when Papa lifted her onto his shoulders and she could see the whole valley spread below them like a tapestry. She remembers eating, not the thin porridge and small pieces of dried meat they ration now, but eating until her belly was full, until she was satisfied, until the idea of hunger seemed impossible. Was that real, or did she imagine it? The pit makes everything from before feel like fairy tales, like stories about a different world where different rules applied, where the sky was blue instead of the brown and grey of earthen walls, where you could stand up straight, where breathing didn't hurt. "Mama," Agnes whispers one night, curled against Ilara's side. "Will summer come back?" Ilara is quiet for a long moment. Her hand, thin and cold, strokes Agnes's hair. "Yes, little bird, summer always comes back. Promise." Another pause, longer. "I promise." But Agnes can hear the uncertainty in her mother's voice, can feel the way Ilara's hand trembles. And she understands, in the way children understand things, they're not supposed to know that her mother isn't sure, that promises made in the dark of winter might not hold weight in the spring. If spring comes, if they live to see it. Agnes closes her eyes, tries to remember the feel of sun on her face. Warm sun, the kind that made her squint and laugh, the kind that seemed impossible now, like remembering what it felt like to fly. In her memory, she's running again, through that green grass, toward a house that's warm without fire, toward a table that has food, toward a future where the cold hasn't taken everything. But then she opens her eyes, and she's back in the pit, back in the darkness, back in the reality of smoke and hunger and the weight of earth pressing down above. Summer feels very far away, impossibly far, like something that happened to a different girl in a different life. "Mama." "Yes, love. I'm scared." Ilara pulls her closer. "I know. I'm scared too." At least that's honest. At least that's true. In the darkness, honesty is all they have left. He can identify which piece of wood is burning just by the sound of the fire. Can tell when the goats are hungry versus content. Can hear somehow when moisture is condensing on the walls before it's visible. He's developing a skill that would have no value in the world above ground. But down here, in this small, dark space, it makes him valuable. Makes him a contributing member of the crew. This is one of the unexpected gifts of winter, of constraint, of being forced into close quarters with limited resources. People develop skills they didn't know they needed, become useful in ways they didn't anticipate. Your son will carry this sensitivity with him for life, will always be able to hear what others miss, will navigate the world with a subtlety that comes from having spent crucial months learning to read silence. The quality of silence varies by time and weather. Morning silence after everyone has woken but before anyone has spoken is clear, crystalline. It's the silence of potential, of a day beginning, of possibilities however limited. Afternoon silence, when everyone is engaged in small tasks, is textured, full of the soft sounds of work. Wool being carded, wood being split, the goats being tended. It's a comfortable silence, a silence of shared purpose. Evening silence after the meal, when everyone is settling for sleep, is heavy, tired. It's the silence of exhaustion, of another day survived, of the relief that comes from knowing you'll wake up tomorrow and do it all again. But the deepest silence comes in the dead hours of the night, when everyone is asleep except whoever is tending the fire, when the world above has gone still, when even the wind has paused for breath. That silence is profound, almost holy. It's the silence of the earth itself, the silence of stone and soil, and the slow, patient turning of the planet through space. In those moments, sitting by the fire in the dead of night, you can hear your own heartbeat, can hear blood moving through your ears, can hear the small sounds of your body doing its work, maintaining temperature, digesting food, keeping you alive without asking permission or acknowledgement. And in that silence, you sometimes hear something else, something harder to name. It's not a sound exactly. Or if it is, it's so low, so deep that you feel it more than hear it. It's the presence of the earth around you, the weight and mass and patient existence of the planet that holds you. That's held everything. That will continue holding long after you're gone. Modern people, you think, have lost access to this silence. They fill their lives with noise, television, radio, the hum of appliances, the roar of traffic. They've created a world where silence is suspicious, where quiet means something's wrong, where stillness equals boredom, equals something to be fixed with more stimulus, more noise, more distraction. But down here, silence is wealth, is treasure, is the sound of safety, because noise means danger, means something unexpected, means a threat. Silence means everything is as it should be, means you're protected, hidden, small enough that winter can't find you. Your mother coughs, and the sound breaks the night silence like a stone thrown into still water. The cough is wet, painful. You can hear the fluid in her lungs, the struggle for air. Your wife wakes, moves to help her, holds her up, rubs her back. There's nothing else to do. No medicine, no doctor, just comfort, just presence, just the knowledge that she's not alone in her suffering. The coughing fit passes. Your mother settles back down. Her breathing returns to that shallow, rattling pattern. Your wife returns to her sleeping space. The silence reforms. But it's different now, tinged with awareness, with the knowledge that you're losing her. That spring might come, but she won't see it. This is what winter teaches, that life is fragile, that survival is never guaranteed, that despite your best efforts, despite your careful planning and your rationed resources and your determination to keep everyone safe, some things are beyond your control. You can't fight death, can't bargain with it, can only bear witness, can only make sure that when it comes, it doesn't come to someone alone in the dark, that there are hands to hold, voices to offer comfort, the warmth of family to ease the transition. Your mother knows she's dying. She's too smart, too experienced to pretend otherwise. But she hasn't said anything, hasn't complained, hasn't demanded attention or special treatment. She's simply continuing, getting up each day, eating her small portion, contributing what she can, living until she can't anymore. There's dignity in that, a kind of courage that doesn't announce itself, that doesn't need recognition. She's teaching you in these final weeks what it means to face the end with grace, with acceptance, without rage or fear or the desperate denial that makes death harder for everyone. You'll remember this. We'll carry it with you when your own time comes. We'll hopefully have the strength to meet death the way she's meeting it. Quietly, without fuss, simply stopping when it's time to stop. The fire needs attention. You add wood, stir the coals, the flames grow. Light pushes back the darkness. Warmth radiates out. The cycle continues. You're still here, still breathing, still maintaining the small rituals that define survival. The silence returns, settles, holds, and in that silence, you find something unexpected. Not happiness, not joy. Those emotions seem too large, too demanding for this small space. But something quieter, something that might be called peace, or acceptance, or simply the absence of fear. You're not afraid down here, not of the dark, not of the confined space, not of the cold world above. You found in this small warm darkness a kind of safety that's deeper than physical comfort. It's the safety of knowing your place, of being part of a system larger than yourself, of trusting that the earth that holds you will continue holding, that you don't have to fight every moment, that you can rest. This is a gift, an unexpected gift from a season that seems designed only to take. Winter has stripped away everything unnecessary, every comfort, every convenience, every distraction. And what remains bare and simple and essential is this: you are alive. You are together. You are held by something larger than yourself. That's enough in this moment, in this silence, in this small pocket of warmth carved from the cold heart of winter. It's enough. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, its own small crises, its own tests of endurance. But tomorrow is not here yet. Right now, there is only this silence, this breath, this moment of being alive in a world that's trying very hard to convince you that life is not worth the effort. But you know better. You know that life is always worth the effort, that every breath is a victory, that survival itself is a form of defiance, a way of saying to winter, to death, to all the forces that want to crush you, not yet, not today. I'm still here. The silence holds, the fire burns, the earth cradles, and you rest, finally, truly rest. There's a story that surfaces in your mind during the long, dark hours. Your grandfather told it to you when you were young. Too young to fully understand maybe, but old enough that it stayed with you, took root, became one of those stories that shape how you see the world. It was about a winter worse than this one. A winter 60 years back when the snow began in October and didn't stop until May, when villages were buried, when entire families disappeared under white drifts and weren't found until spring thaw revealed their frozen bodies. That winter, your grandfather said there was a lord, not your lord, a different one, but the kind of man lords tend to be: wealthy, powerful, accustomed to having his demands met immediately and completely. He lived in a castle that had stood for 300 years. Stone walls thick as a man is tall, towers that scraped the sky, a great hall that could seat 100 people for feasts. When winter came, the Lord was confident. He had grain stores, he had wine, he had entire forests set aside for his fireplaces. He had servants whose job was literally to keep him comfortable. What could winter do to a man of such resources? Everything, as it turned out. The castle, for all its grandeur, was a trap. The stone walls that looked so impressive conducted cold like they were built for that purpose. The high ceilings created volumes of air that couldn't be warmed. The windows, even the small ones, leaked heat constantly. The drafts were so bad that tapestries hung on the walls to block them would blow parallel to the floor on particularly windy nights. The Lord burned wood day and night, entire trees. His servants worked in shifts, doing nothing but carrying firewood and stoking flames. And still, the castle was unbearably cold. Frost formed on the inside of the windows. Water left overnight froze solid. The Lord slept under piles of furs so heavy he could barely move, and still woke shivering. His servants, meanwhile, were sleeping in the kitchen, huddled near the ovens, piled together like animals, sharing body heat, accepting discomfort as the price of survival. And they were warmer than their lord, measurably warmer, more comfortable, more likely to survive. This created a strange situation. The Lord needed his servants, needed them to fetch and carry and maintain the fires that he depended on. But the servants realized they didn't actually need the Lord, didn't need his wealth or his commands or his promises of reward. They needed warmth, they needed food, they needed each other. The Lord was irrelevant to those calculations. So when he demanded they work longer hours, they refused. When he commanded they bring more wood immediately, they did so when it suited them. When he threatened punishment for disobedience, they laughed. What was he going to do? Throw them out into the cold? They'd just go underground, dig a pit, survive without him. The Lord your grandfather said, learned humility that winter, learned that all his wealth couldn't buy warmth when the architecture worked against him, learned that power means nothing when you can't survive without the cooperation of people you've spent your life dismissing as beneath you. He survived the winter, barely, but he was never quite the same afterward. Something in him broke. Some assumption about the natural order of things. He became your grandfather, said almost kind, as if the cold had frozen the cruelty out of him and left only the fragile human underneath. You think about this story, now sitting in your pit, while somewhere above you in another castle, another lord is probably shivering despite his wealth. The story matters because it illustrates a truth that winter makes undeniable: cold is democratic. It doesn't care about your bloodline, your title, your accumulated power. Cold is physics. It follows rules that precede humanity and will continue long after the last castle crumbles. Down here in your pit, you're experiencing what those servants understood. You're experiencing the leveling effect of shared struggle, the way hardship burns away the artificial hierarchies that society constructs and reveals the basic truth: we're all just human bodies trying to maintain 98.6 degrees in a world that's actively trying to cool us down. Your pit doesn't care that you're a peasant, doesn't diminish its warmth because you lack title or land or noble blood. The earth provides the same insulation to everyone, the same thermal mass, the same patient protection. You could be a king down here, and the physics would work exactly the same way. This is almost funny when you think about it. The lords build upward, build castles and towers and monuments to their own importance. And those monuments betray them, make them cold, make them dependent on resources they can't always access, make them paradoxically more vulnerable than the people they rule. While you down in a hole in the ground, sleeping on straw, eating porridge, thin enough to see through your warmer, more secure, more likely to survive until spring. What does that say about human notions of progress, about civilization, about the relationship between power and effectiveness? You don't have answers to these questions. You're not educated in philosophy or politics. You're just a person trying to survive winter. But the questions persist, nag at you, suggest that maybe the world is organized wrong. Maybe the people at the top aren't actually better off in the ways that matter. Maybe height, literal and metaphorical, is overrated. Your wife is working with wool near the fire, carding it. Her hands move in patterns so familiar they're almost automatic. She's been doing this since she was a girl. Her mother taught her. Her grandmother taught her mother. The knowledge flows through generations of women who understood that survival means preparation, means having warm clothing ready before you need it, means thinking ahead to next winter, even as you're suffering through this one. She doesn't complain, hasn't complained once this entire winter. Not about the cold, or the hunger, or the smell, or the boredom, or the fear. She just continues, keeps her hands busy, keeps the household functioning, keeps everyone alive through the sheer force of her refusal to give up. This is strength, real strength, not the kind that shows up in stories about heroes and battles, but the kind that actually matters. The strength to keep going when every day is the same, and nothing changes, and spring seems like a myth you once heard about. Your children are playing quietly in the corner. They've invented a game with pebbles and scraps of cloth. You don't fully understand the rules, don't need to. What matters is that they're occupied, that they're not fighting, that they've found a way to be children even in circumstances that would break most adults. They'll remember this winter forever. It will shape them in ways you can't predict, might make them stronger, might make them cautious, might give them perspective that their own children, if they're lucky enough to live in easier times, will lack. Or it might just damage them, stunt them, leave them with fears and anxieties that they'll carry like scars. You don't know, can't know. You're just doing your best with circumstances you didn't choose. Your mother shifts near the fire, opens her eyes, looks at you with an expression you can't quite read. Recognition, certainly, but also something else. Something that might be apology, or release, or simply exhaustion too deep for words. You move to sit beside her, take her hand. It's cold, too cold. Her body is giving up, is deciding that maintaining temperature requires more resources than it has available. This is how it starts, how it ends. The body makes a calculation and decides that continued existence costs more than it's worth. You hold her hand. Try to share your warmth. Try to will your own heat into her cooling flesh. It doesn't work like that. You know it doesn't work like that. But you try anyway. She squeezes your hand, weakly, a gesture of recognition, of thanks, of goodbye. She doesn't speak, hasn't had the energy for words in days, but her eyes say what needs saying, that she's proud of you, that you've done well, that she's ready to stop fighting, that she gives you permission to let her go. You're not ready, will never be ready. But readiness is not required. Death doesn't wait for permission, doesn't care about your feelings or your needs or your desperate wish that it would choose someone else, anyone else. Your wife comes over, sits on your mother's other side. Together you hold vigil, keep her company in these last hours. This is all you can offer: presence, witness, the knowledge that she's not alone. The children sense something is happening. They quiet their game, come closer, form a small circle around their grandmother. They don't fully understand death. How could they? But they understand that something important is occurring, something that requires respect, stillness, attention. Your mother's breathing changes, becomes shallower, more irregular. Sometimes a breath comes and you think it's the last one. Then another follows, and another. The body holding on past the point where any rational decision would say to stop. This continues for hours. The fire burns. The goats shift in their corner. The world above continues its frozen existence. And down here, in this small, warm space, a woman who has survived 60 winters is preparing to stop surviving. Finally, between one breath and the next, she's gone. No drama, no final words, no cinematic moment. Just breath, and then no breath. Existence, and then absence. The transition so subtle you almost miss it. You sit there still holding her hand, waiting to see if another breath will come. It doesn't. She's gone, has left this small circle of warmth for whatever comes next, or for nothing. You don't know, can't know, can only know that she's not here anymore. Your wife begins to cry, quietly, tears running down her face but no sound. The children understand now. They huddle closer to their mother, seeking comfort, seeking reassurance that death, which has just taken their grandmother, won't take them too. You should say something, some words to mark the moment. But what words are adequate? What can you say that means anything in the face of this final silence? So you say nothing. Just sit there, holding her cooling hand, marking this moment with your presence, if not your eloquence. In Thomas's pit, there's a different kind of death approaching. Not the slow death of illness, but the sudden death of structural failure. It happens without warning. Middle of the night, a sound like thunder underground, a section of the wall weakened by moisture, and the freeze-thaw cycle happening in the layers of earth simply gives way. Earth pours in, 30-40 kilograms of dirt and frozen debris. It buries the corner where they store their food, buries the small pile of firewood, nearly buries Agnes, who screams and scrambles away just in time. "Get out!" Thomas shouts. "Get to the entrance. Now!" Ilara moves as fast as her pregnant body allows, grabs Agnes, pulls her toward the tunnel that leads to the surface. But the collapse has shifted something. The entrance is partially blocked. Ilara can't fit through, can't squeeze her swollen belly past the obstruction. She's trapped. They're all trapped. More earth falls. The ceiling is sagging, bowing under weight it was never properly designed to hold. The roof poles are cracking, making sounds like bones breaking. Thomas throws himself at the wall, starts digging, throwing dirt behind him like a dog. His fingernails tear, blood mixes with frozen earth, but he doesn't stop, can't stop. If the pit collapses completely, they die, buried alive, suffocating in darkness. Agnes is crying, screaming, "Papa, Papa, make it stop." Ilara is silent, one hand on her belly, watching Thomas dig with eyes that have seen too much already, that are preparing to see more, that are preparing maybe to see nothing at all. Thomas digs. The earth keeps falling. The race is impossible. He can't dig faster than the collapse, can't shore up a structure that's fundamentally unstable, can't fix the mistakes he made when he built this place too quickly, too carelessly, too desperately. But he tries anyway, because what else can he do? Blood from his hands makes the dirt mud. The mud is harder to grip, harder to move, but he keeps going, keeps digging, keeps fighting against physics and time and the inevitability of poorly built things falling apart. And then somehow the collapse stops. The ceiling holds, barely, sagging and groaning and clearly unstable, but holding, for now. Thomas backs away from the wall. His hands are ruined. His chest is heaving. His face is covered in dirt and blood, and tears he didn't know he was crying. The pit is smaller now, much smaller. The collapsed wall has reduced their living space by a third, has buried their food stores, has left them with even less room, less resources, less hope. Ilara touches the ceiling poles. They're cracked, bowed. One hard snow above one more shift in the earth, and they'll snap completely. "We need to reinforce this," she says. Her voice is eerily calm. Shock, maybe, or acceptance. Tonight, before it falls completely. Thomas looks at his hands, at the blood and the torn fingernails, at the fingers that are already swelling. That might not work properly ever again. He looks at Ilara, 7 months pregnant, exhausted, half-starved. He looks at Agnes, 6 years old, still shaking from the collapse, traumatized by yet another brush with death. And he nods. Yes, we reinforce it. Now. They work through the night, using what little wood they have left, tying poles together with strips torn from their own clothing, creating a structure within the structure, a cage of wood and hope and stubborn refusal to accept that this might be where they die. By dawn, the reinforcement is done. It's not good, not by any measure, but it might hold, might give them a few more weeks, might be enough. They collapse around the fire, too exhausted to eat, too shaken to sleep, just sitting, breathing, alive for another day by the thinnest possible margin. Ilara touches her belly. He stopped kicking, she says. During the collapse, he stopped. Thomas's heart freezes. And now, Ilara is quiet, waiting, feeling. Then finally, she nods. Now he's back, kicking again, still fighting. Still fighting. All of them, still fighting. In a pit that's falling apart, with food running out, with injuries mounting, with winter showing no signs of releasing its grip, still fighting. Because what else is there? Later, when the shock has faded enough to allow action, you'll have to take her outside. We'll have to dig through frozen earth to give her a grave. We'll have to do all the physical work of death that our modern world has delegated to professionals. But for now, you just sit, just hold, just acknowledge that someone who was here is here no longer, that the circle of warmth has lost one of its members, that winter has claimed its price after all. And yet, strange as it seems, there's also a kind of peace in this moment. She's not suffering anymore, not struggling for breath, not fighting a battle she was always going to lose. She's released. Whatever comes next, whether it's rest or continuation or simply absence, it has to be easier than this, has to be gentler than winter. Your pit holds this moment. This ending becomes the last place she was alive, the last space she occupied. Her presence is written into the walls now, into the floor, into the very air you breathe. She's part of the structure now, part of the story, part of what this space means. In the spring, when archaeologists dig here, centuries from now, they'll find evidence of her. Traces in the soil, chemical signatures, proof that a woman lived and died in this spot. They won't know her name, won't know her face, won't know the specific texture of her life. But they'll know she existed, that she was real, that she mattered enough for someone to mourn. And that's something. That's a form of immortality more real than monuments. The fire needs tending. Life continues. The living have to keep living. You rise, add wood, stir the coals. The cycle repeats. Because it has to. Because stopping means dying. And you're not ready for that. Not yet. Your wife pulls the blanket over your mother's face, a small gesture of respect, of marking transition. The children return to their corner subdued, now quiet in a way that's different from their usual quiet. And the pit settles back into its rhythms, fire crackling, goats shifting, the sound of breath and small movements. Life asserting itself in the face of death. life refusing to stop just because stopping would be easier. This is the lesson. This is what winter teaches. That life is fragile and death is certain, and we continue anyway. We keep the fire burning anyway. We ration the food and share the warmth, and wake up each morning determined to make it through one more day. Not because we're heroes, not because we're strong, but because we're human and humans are stubborn. We keep going past the point where any reasonable analysis says we should quit. We survive through sheer refusal to do otherwise. Your mother understood this, lived it, demonstrated it right up to the moment she couldn't anymore. And now you carry that forward. Honor her memory by continuing, by surviving, by making it to spring so her death won't have been the beginning of a cascade that takes everyone. You will make it. You have to. Because that's what you do. That's what humans have always done. We endure. We persist. We outlast the cold and the dark and the grief. And someday, in some distant spring, the world will warm again. The ice will melt. The earth will soften. Life will return. But for now, there is only this moment, this breath, this small circle of warmth in an infinite cold. And it's enough. It has to be, because it's all you have. The days after your mother's death are strange. The pit feels both emptier and more crowded. Her physical absence creates a gap that everyone navigates around, but her presence remains in the spot where she slept, in the rhythm of the household that still expects her to wake, in the automatic impulse to save a portion of food for her before remembering she doesn't need it anymore. You buried her as well as you could, went above ground for the first time in weeks, felt the shock of cold air on your face like a slap. The world above was white and hostile and beautiful in a way that seemed obscene given your purpose. You and two neighbors' men from their own pits who emerged to help, because this is what people do, broke through the frozen earth with picks and determination. The ground didn't want to yield, resisted, but eventually you created a space deep enough, laid her down, covered her, spoke no words because words seemed inadequate, then returned to your separate pits to continue surviving. The cold you let in when you opened the entrance took 2 days to recover from. 2 days of everyone huddled close to the fire, shivering, waiting for the earth to warm again. It was worth it. She deserved better than to remain in the pit, better than to decompose in the space where her family still had to live. But the cost was real, is still being paid in the chill that hasn't quite left the far corners of your shelter. But life continues, has to. The fire still needs tending. The goats still need feeding. The children still need whatever scraps of normalcy you can provide. So you continue. Your wife has taken over the small rituals your mother used to maintain. She's the one who wakes in the deepest part of the night to check on everyone, who redistributes blankets so the coldest person gets the most coverage, who notices when someone is struggling and offers what comfort circumstances allow. The role has transferred. The necessity remains. This is how families work down here, how they have to work. Everyone has responsibilities. Everyone contributes. There's no room for passengers, no space for people who don't carry their weight. Not because you're cruel, but because the mathematics of survival are absolute. Every person generates heat. Every person consumes food. The balance has to work, or everyone dies. Your children have grown into their roles with a competence that surprises you. Your daughter especially. She manages the food stores with an efficiency that would make a merchant proud. She knows exactly how much grain remains, can calculate how many days it will last at current consumption, can adjust portions to stretch supplies without making the adjustment obvious enough to panic anyone. She's learned to be careful with the accounting, to build in margins, to assume the worst and be pleasantly surprised rather than assuming the best and facing disaster. These are skills that will serve her well. That will make her a valuable wife to whoever she eventually marries. That will help her survive winters of her own. Your older son has become the fire tender. He's taken on this responsibility with a seriousness beyond his years. He understands somehow that the fire is not just heat. It's life itself. It's the difference between survival and freezing. He wakes on his own now without being prompted to add wood through the night. Checks the coals with a practiced eye. Knows by looking when the fire needs attention and when it can be left alone. Your younger son is the goat keeper. He's developed a relationship with the animals that borders on friendship, talks to them, names them despite your warning that you might have to eat them before spring, checks their health, notices when they're acting strangely, has learned to read their behavior as signals of larger environmental changes. When the goats are restless, bad weather is coming. When they're calm, things are stable. He's become your weather forecaster, using animals as instruments. This division of labor is not something you planned. It emerged organically, people gravitating toward tasks they had aptitude for, finding niches where they could contribute, creating a system that distributes the burden of survival across all available hands. And it works. The household functions, not comfortably, not easily, but it functions. Everyone knows their role. Everyone executes. You, as the adult male, occupy a strange position. You're nominally the head of the household, the final authority. But down here, that authority is mostly theoretical. Your wife makes most decisions. Your daughter manages resources. Your sons handle specific domains. You're discovering what men throughout history have discovered when stripped of the props that usually support male authority. That much of that authority is circumstantial, depends on context, on having a public sphere where male power is recognized and enforced. Down here in the private space of family survival, competence matters more than gender. This should bother you, should threaten your sense of self. But it doesn't, not really. Because you're all too busy surviving to worry about ego. And because there's something liberating about not having to be in charge, about being able to simply contribute rather than command, about being part of a crew rather than a captain. The pit has taught you this, has stripped away the performances that define life above ground and revealed what's actually necessary, what actually works, and what works is cooperation, mutual support, Everyone doing what they're best at without worrying about hierarchy or status or who gets credit. In the castles above, lords are probably struggling with this same lesson, probably discovering that when resources are scarce and survival is uncertain, the normal rules don't apply. That servants who used to bow and scrape now make demands. That power based on social convention evaporates when the conventions are suspended. But you've known this all along, have lived with precarity as your normal state. The lords are just visiting a world you inhabit full time. They'll emerge in spring and reconstruct their authority. Will punish anyone who forgot their place. Will pretend that winter never revealed the fundamental arbitrariness of their power. But you'll remember. Will know that when things get hard, when survival is on the line, the peasant in the pit is warmer than the lord in the castle. That the lowest position can be the highest wisdom. That going down can be the only way to eventually rise. These thoughts occupy you as you sit by the fire watching your family function around you. Your wife spinning wool, your daughter checking stores, your sons tending their respective responsibilities. All of this happening smoothly, efficiently, without your direction. You're proud of them. They've risen to this challenge, have become harder, more competent, more resilient. Winter is forging them into something stronger, something that will endure beyond this season. The meal is ready. You gather around the fire as always. The portion is small, always small, but it's warm and shared and sufficient. You eat slowly, make it last. The warmth spreads through your body, reminds you that you're alive, that you're still here, still fighting. Your daughter speaks, rare enough that everyone pays attention. She says that if consumption continues at current rates, you'll make it to March, maybe early April, before the food runs out. Her tone is matter of fact. She's reporting data. But under the data is a question: will spring come before we starve? You assure her it will. Spring always comes, always has, always will. The earth tilts, the sun returns, the ice melts. This is physics, as reliable as the thermal mass that's keeping you warm. You just have to hold on, just have to keep going a little longer. She nods, accepts this, returns to her meal. But you can see the worry in her eyes, the calculation that she's too smart not to make. That if spring is late, if the thaw doesn't come until May, if supplies have to stretch further than planned, then the math stops working. Then people start dying. But you don't say this. Don't voice the fear, because voicing it makes it more real, gives it power. So you stay silent. Finish your meal. Project confidence even as doubt eats at your certainty. The meal ends. Your wife collects the bowls. Your daughter updates her marks on the wood. One more day survived. One more day closer to whatever comes next. Your sons check their respective charges. Everyone performing their roles. The machine of survival grinding forward. And you sit by the fire, watching your family feeling the weight of responsibility and love and fear all tangled together, knowing that you'd die for any of them, that you'd give your food, your warmth, your life, if it meant they'd survive. That this small circle of people bound by blood and circumstance and shared suffering is all that matters. The pit holds you, all of you, keeps you warm enough, safe enough, alive enough, and for now that's sufficient. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, its own fears, its own tests of endurance. But tomorrow is not here yet. Right now, there is only this moment, this family, this small defiant flame in the heart of winter's darkness. Winter can rage all it wants, can press down with all its frozen weight, can try to suffocate hope and freeze courage and extinguish life. But down here, in this small space carved from the earth, you're holding the line, maintaining the warmth, keeping the flame alive. March arrives, though you only know this because your daughter has counted the days and declared it so. The marks on her wood say March. The calendar in her head says March, but nothing else does. The world above ground is still frozen, still hostile, still offering no sign that spring has any intention of arriving. This is the hardest time, the time when you've been underground so long that you start to forget what above ground even means, what sun feels like, what green looks like, what moving in a straight line without stooping feels like. The pit has become your entire universe, your only reality. Everything else is memory, and memory after months of darkness starts to feel unreal. You're forgetting things, small things at first, the exact shade of green that new leaves are, the sound of rain on a roof that's not underground, the feeling of wind on your face that doesn't threaten to kill you. These details are slipping away, being replaced by the details of pit life, the smell of smoke, the taste of thin porridge, the sound of your children's breathing in the dark. This erosion of memory is dangerous, because memory of better times is what keeps you going. The knowledge that this is temporary, that spring will come and you'll emerge and life will resume. If you lose that knowledge, if you start to believe that this is all there is, all there ever was, all there ever will be, then despair wins, and despair is death. So you fight to remember. You tell stories, describe summer days, talk about the feeling of sun on your skin, the taste of fresh vegetables, the luxury of moving freely in open space. You make yourself remember, force the memories to stay vivid, use them as anchors to a future you have to believe exists, even though all evidence suggests otherwise. Your wife does the same. She describes the garden she'll plant, the specific vegetables, where each will go, how she'll rotate the crops. She talks about this with such detail, such certainty, that it becomes real, becomes something that will happen rather than something she hopes will happen. Your children listen to these stories with expressions you can't quite read. They remember summer technically, but it's been so long now that those memories have gone soft, blurry. They're not sure anymore what's real memory and what's imagination, and that worries you more than you want to admit. But you endure. That's what you do. You acknowledge the losses and then you keep going. Because the alternative is unacceptable. Because giving up means dying. Because you've come this far and spring has to be close and you'll be damned if you quit now. The fire burns. Always burns. You've kept it alive for nearly 4 months now. Months of continuous combustion. Months of someone waking every few hours to add fuel. This fire has become more than heat. It's become a symbol, proof that you're still fighting, still maintaining, still choosing life over the easier darkness. You think about fires in castles, about the massive fireplaces that consume entire trees and still leave the halls cold, about the inefficiency, the waste, the fundamental misunderstanding of thermal dynamics that those structures represent. And you're grateful despite everything that you're not there, that you're here instead, in your small pit, with your efficient fire, your patient earth, your democratic warmth that doesn't distinguish between lord and peasant, because physics doesn't care about social hierarchies. The earth around you is holding steady, maintaining its temperature, doing its work of cradling you through winter's worst. You press your hand against the wall sometimes, feeling the coolness, yes, but also the stability, the reliability. The earth doesn't panic, doesn't despair, doesn't count the days or fear the future. It just is. Just continues being what it is, and there's comfort in that. In the presence of something larger than yourself that's not subject to the same anxieties and fears that plague human consciousness. You're learning slowly what it means to be held by the earth, to be part of its system rather than separate from it, to accept that you're not independent, not self-sufficient, not the master of your environment. You're dependent, fragile, maintained by forces beyond your control. And acknowledging that dependence, accepting it, is actually liberating. Because it means you can stop pretending, can stop performing strength you don't have, can just be a creature surviving as best it can with the help of a planet that for whatever reason seems willing to provide that help. This is the gift of winter, the lesson buried in all the suffering, that humans are not separate from nature, not above it, not destined to conquer it. We're part of it, subject to it, held by it. And when we accept that, when we work with natural systems instead of against them, we survive. We thrive even. We find ways to make it through seasons that should kill us. The pit is teaching you humility, has been teaching you all winter, but the lesson is finally sinking in. Finally becoming something you understand, not just intellectually, but in your bones, in the core of your being. You're small, you're temporary, you're utterly dependent on things you don't control. And that's okay. That's how it should be. That's the truth that modern people will spend centuries denying before finally inevitably being forced to relearn it. Your daughter makes another mark on her wood. One more day closer. The marks are a form of hope, of faith that counting matters, that there's something to count toward, that spring will eventually arrive and these marks will represent victory rather than just time past. You want to believe her. Want to believe that the world works the way it's supposed to, that seasons change on schedule, that winter, however harsh, eventually yields to spring. But you've lived long enough to know that want doesn't determine reality, that the world doesn't owe you anything, that sometimes people count the days right up until they run out of days to count. But you don't say this. Don't voice the doubt, because doubt is contagious, and you need everyone to believe. Need them to keep hoping. Need them to maintain faith in a future that you're not entirely sure exists. So, you smile, nod, agree that yes, spring is coming. Any day now, just a little longer. And maybe it's true. Maybe spring is coming. Maybe your daughter's counting is accurate, and March will turn to April, and April will bring the thaw, and you'll all emerge blinking and weak but alive into a world that's warming again. Or maybe it's not true. Maybe this winter is the one that doesn't end, the one that breaks the pattern, the one that shows up in history books as the winter when entire villages disappeared, when the counting stopped mattering because everyone stopped breathing. You don't know, can't know, can only keep the fire burning and the food rationed and the hope alive and see what happens. Can only do what humans have always done when faced with forces beyond their control. Continue. Persist. Refuse to quit until quitting is the only option left. The pit holds you. The earth cradles you. The fire warms you. And you hold on, all of you, together, waiting for spring, hoping for spring, believing in spring, even when belief requires more strength than you think you have. Because what else can you do? Give up despair. Accept that this is how it ends. No. Not while you're still breathing. Not while the fire still burns. Not while your family still needs you to be strong. So you continue. One more day, one more breath, one more small victory of staying alive when dying would be easier. And that's enough. For now, for today, for this moment, it's enough. The snow is melting. You can hear it. The steady drip of water finding its way through the thatch above. The sound of winter finally releasing its grip. It's the 3rd week of March according to your daughter's count. Later than you hoped, not as late as you feared. The waiting is almost over. You've been listening to this drip for 2 days now. At first, you couldn't believe it. Thought it was imagination, wishful thinking. But no, it's real. Water is liquid again. Ice is surrendering. The season is changing. The sound is beautiful. More beautiful than any music. It's the sound of survival, of endurance rewarded, of winter admitting defeat. Your family is stirring with new energy. After months of lethargy of conserving every movement, everyone is suddenly animated, ready, eager to emerge into whatever world is waiting above. But you're cautious. You've survived this long by being cautious, by not assuming that better is coming just because you want it to. So you wait. Another day, 2 days, 3. You wait until the dripping becomes a flow, until the sounds from above suggest that the world is truly thawing, until you're certain. And then, finally, you make the decision. It's time. You prepare carefully. Everyone puts on their warmest clothing. What little you've managed to keep dry. You approach the entrance. Haven't been through it since you buried your mother. Haven't seen daylight since then. You go first. Someone has to. So you crawl forward, move toward the light that's filtering down through the entrance. Weak light, grey light, but light nonetheless. And then you emerge. The world hits you all at once. The brightness, the space, the sky, the impossible, overwhelming vastness of it all. You've been in a space the size of a small room for 4 months, and now suddenly there's infinite space in all directions, and your mind doesn't know how to process it. The cold is shocking. The air is like knives on your skin, like ice in your lungs. You're gasping, shivering. Your body is screaming that this is wrong, that you should go back down where it's safe. But you don't go back. You stand, straighten, feel your spine extend for the first time in months. Feel the overwhelming relief of being upright, of claiming your full height, of taking up space without apology. Your family emerges behind you, one by one, each having the same reaction you did. The shock, the disorientation, the overwhelming sensory overload of suddenly being in the world again. You gather together, huddle close. You're still cold, still weak, but you're out. You're above ground. You survived. The village is emerging too, from other pits, other families who made the same choice you did, who went down when winter came and are only now coming back up. You see them, recognize them, wave. Everyone is too exhausted to do more than acknowledge each other's existence. But the acknowledgement matters. You're not alone. Others made it too. You're all here, still alive. You look at your children. They're thin, too thin. Their faces are hollow. Their eyes are too large. They look like they've aged years in the months underground. But they're standing. They're moving. They're alive. And that's everything. Your wife is crying. Silent tears running down her face. She's not sad. She's relieved, released. The weight of keeping everyone alive for 4 months is finally lifting. You put your arm around her, pull her close. You're both shaking, from cold, from relief, from emotion too large to contain. You've made it, against odds that seemed impossible, against hunger and cold and darkness and doubt. You've made it. The snow is still thick on the ground, but it's melting, visibly melting. You can see patches of earth emerging, brown and wet, and more beautiful than anything you've ever seen. You think about your mother. Wish she could see this, but she's part of the earth now, part of the system that protected you. In a way, she's still here, will always be here. This is continuity. This is how it works. You survive. You pass on knowledge. You teach the next generation how to endure. And then you become part of the earth that makes survival possible. The cycle continues, will always continue. You survived by going underground, by accepting that survival sometimes means lowering yourself, by working with the earth instead of against it, by being small enough that winter couldn't find you. This is the lesson you'll carry forward. That survival isn't about strength. It's about adaptation, about working with what you have, about understanding the world well enough to find your place within it. You made it. Winter tried to kill you, and it failed. You're still here, still standing, still breathing, still together. And that's enough. More than enough. That's everything. The sun is trying to break through the clouds. You can see it, just barely. A brighter patch in the grey. A promise, a suggestion that warmth is returning. Spring is coming, really coming. Not the wishful thinking of months underground, but actual spring. Spring you can see and hear and feel. You've earned this, all of you. Not everyone gets this. Not every family makes it. But yours did. And now the story continues. Life continues. You continue. Rest now. Let the earth hold you one more time. Not the close holding of the pit, but the vast holding of standing on the surface, of being part of the world again. You waited, you survived, you're here, and that's enough, will always be enough. Sweet dreams, may they be warm, may they be bright, may they be full of the spring that's coming, the spring that you earned, the spring that proves once again that survival favors those who are willing to be humble, to be patient, to be small when necessary, to work with the earth instead of against it, to endure.